The studio is international relations expert Emmanuel Navon. Dr. Emmanuel Navon. Dr. Navon, thank you for joining us. And what is the future of Syria that Putin, along with Rouhani and Erdogan, are setting? We understand that they have, as it seems, their side is winning the civil war, along, of course, with President Bashar Assad. What kind of plan are they laying for the future, if any?
Look, what Putin is trying to do very clearly is to try and position himself as the leading force in the region, even trying to sideline the United States and the United Nations in the process. But I think very soon he will realize that it's much harder to reach a diplomatic solution than to preserve the Assad regime via military intervention. I mean, Putin really entered the fray in the Syrian crisis after the United States basically gave up. So he was able really to preserve the Assad regime together with Iran. But now he's starting to realize how complicated it is going to be to find a compromise between conflicting interests and demands, whether it is Turkey that refuses any power to the Kurds or the opposition that is supported by the United States and by Saudi Arabia, and the opposition that completely refuses to even consider Assad remaining in place even for a transition period. So as I said, he's trying to flex his muscles to the world, say, look, I'm the one in charge, but very soon I believe he'll realize that it's much more complicated than that.
Because everyone thinks that once ISIS is gone, the opposition is gone. But let's remember, this war started in 2011 when no one really knew what the Islamic State is. It was barely existent back then. It was other factors fighting against Assad. Those factors are still there, and they have their demands.
Absolutely. The factors are still there. Obviously, the United States, the main objective of the United States was to eliminate the Islamic State. This has been achieved, and it seems that President Trump doesn't have so much interest in Syria besides defeating the Islamic State. But again, you have all these conflicting interests. Israel does not want a military presence of Iran close to its border. As I said, Turkey doesn't want the Kurds to have any power. The Iranians want to remain basically in Syria. And of course, the Saudis are never going to agree to that. So how is Putin going to really bring all these conflicting interests together? It seems really impossible. And the same way that the civil war has been going on for over 6 years, it seems that those negotiations to try and solve the solution solve the crisis in Syria is going to take many, many more years.
You mentioned Israel, and we heard that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke with French President Emmanuel Macron, and basically telling him Israel will attack, Israel will go on the attack if its interests are hampered by Iranian presence, especially or Hezbollah presence in Syria. How much leverage does Israel have? I mean, how much can it act, bearing the fact that the owners there in Syria, let's call it this way, is not the United States, but Russia?
Well, I would argue that the owner is Russia, really, because, as I said, it's not enough to intervene militarily. You really have to be able to impose a solution which Russia is not going to be able to do. But the point is that Israel is definitely considered, and rightly so, by the main powers as a central element in this conflict. Israel being a major military power, everybody realizes, whether it's Putin, who's also been updating Prime Minister Netanyahu about his talks with the Iranians and with the Turks, whether it is the French President Emmanuel Macron, who realizes that nothing can be done, whether it is in Syria or in Lebanon, without updating Israel and without knowing what Israel's position is going to be. Israel is a major military and regional power in the Middle East, and the great powers realize and understand that nothing can really be agreed upon in Syria without the de facto agreement of Israel, or at least to accept Israel's red lines, which, as I said, is no Iranian military presence close to the Israeli border.
So, as it seems, the fighting on the ground may soon be over, but there's plenty more to solve. Dr. Navon, please stay with us for our next subject as well. Rival Palestinian